Hello folks and welcome back to War Tree Ironworks. This is 5 Blacksmiths of History. This episode is a bit of a long one, so I'm cutting it into 2 parts. Part 1 is going to have our first 2 blacksmiths, and then we will continue on with Part 2 with the remaining 3. And so, let's get started with number 5, the inventor and blacksmith Thomas Davenport. He was born on the 9th of July in Williamstown, Vermont, and he was the 8th of 12 other children. At the age of 10, Thomas's father had passed away, and 4 years later, with very little in the way of education, Thomas was indentured to a blacksmith at the age of 14, where he worked in a smithy for 7 years. With room and board, along with 6 weeks of annual education in return for his servitude, it is said that while indentured, Davenport expressed great interest in music and was very passionate about reading. But in 1823, at the age of 21, and newly liberated from being indentured in the master-smith's shop, Thomas Davenport had resettled to Forestdale, a village in the town of Brandon, Vermont, where he had set up his own workshop. Once becoming somewhat successful, he met a woman named Emily Goss, the daughter of a local merchant by the name of Rufus Goss. Thomas and Emily would go on to start a family, and being mostly self-taught, and right in the middle of a booming iron industry, Thomas would collect books and journals in order to learn as much as he can about the enigma of electricity. Once the spring of 1833 rolled in, Thomas heard news of a piece of technology that would alter the iron industry. His curiosity was piqued, so much so he would go on to the other side of Lake Champlain, to Ironville, New York. Once in Ironville, Thomas would see just what everybody in the industry was talking about. It was a process invented by Joseph Henry that used an electromagnet to separate crushed ore from its impurities, but it would revolutionize the way steel was produced in the United States forever. It would change the way he saw the future. Almost immediately, he went and purchased an electromagnet of his own to tear down and learn exactly how and why it worked. Thomas, after learning as much as he could about the device, he deconstructed, forged better iron core, and rewired his magnet. He is known for constructing the first battery-powered DC electric motor the next year in 1834, and received the first American patent on his electric machine in 1837. Thomas Davenport died on the 6th of July in 1851, only 3 days before his 49th birthday. And that's number 5. Thomas was a pretty interesting guy, and he's probably responsible for a lot of things that we use still today and even just play with, like RC cars and basically anything that takes an electric motor. There's a lot more I probably could have put in this, but it was starting to get a little long anyway. So let me know what you think down in the comment section below. And on to number 4. Born on the 24th of February in 1785, the blacksmith Noah Beauchamp was the first person to be legally executed by hanging in Park County, Indiana. A Maryland native, he was born to Thomas and Sarah Beauchamp, and as a grown man, he grew to be over 6 feet tall. He was a devout Baptist and expressively very much against the idea of slavery. This would lead to many arguments, fights, and disagreements with his father Thomas, whom owned several slaves, and eventually led to Noah being disowned. Noah left Maryland for Kentucky and soon on to Ohio, where he would meet Elizabeth Adams, who would become his wife and mother to their first child, they named Noah Jr. He was born in Cincinnati in 1804. Around 1811, Noah and his family moved to the township of Connorsville in Fayette County, Indiana. It was just a territory at the time. The Beauchamps would set up a smithy, and shortly after, they were able to purchase a plot of land the next year. And after some time, Noah had been appointed a lieutenant of one of the best organized regiments, the 11th Indiana Territorial Regiment, on the 29th of April in 1814. But once again, due to slavery being a thing in most places those days, it was not very socially acceptable for whites to do business with blacks. So Noah and Elizabeth moved once again, but to Edgar County, Illinois. They sold their land in Fayette County in 1828 to a man named Caesar Findley. They lived up in Illinois until the mid-1830s, when they decided to move back to Indiana once again, only this time in Vigo County, in the township of Sugar Creek. Once in Sugar Creek, the Beauchamps had started a farm next to several other families, including the Mickleberries. This is when problems started with a property line dispute. But despite this, the Mickleberries hired Noah's daughters for some knitting work. This resulted in the daughters being accused of stealing leftover wool from the job that they were hired to do, and the Mickleberries had told everyone in town about it. After hearing of the accusations, Noah was steamed, so much so that he decided to confront George Mickleberry. While on his way to confront George about the accusations, Noah stopped himself in a field where he had been preparing meat earlier in the day. Feeling like he may need to protect himself, Noah had grabbed a large butcher knife he had driven into his stump and took it with him on his way to confront his neighbor. When George answered the door, he found Noah standing there, angered in the doorway. Noah began to belittle George's daughters, and it is reported that when one of the daughters began talking back at Noah, Noah threatened her with the knife, saying, "If you was a man, I'd cut you into laces." It is at this instant instincts took over, and George grabbed Noah Beauchamp's shoulder. Right then, Noah drove his knife into George's heart, and it is said his sternum cracked open and George died almost instantly. Knowing exactly what he had done, Noah fled down the Wabash River in a stolen rowboat, leaving everything and everyone behind, and the word of the murder was out, and a huge manhunt began, but Noah was nowhere to be found in Viau County or the surrounding area. But down in Texas, Noah would set up another blacksmith shop under his own name. He even borrowed money to make it happen. But when Noah's wanted poster finally caught up with him, brandishing a $500 reward, one of the lender's sons decided to collect the reward. Noah was then captured and taken on a riverboat back to Indiana, though he didn't make it easy. But Noah Beauchamp would have his trial and be sentenced to death by hanging for the murder of George Mickleberry. And on December 30th, 1842, in Rockville, Indiana, Noah Beauchamp's sentence was carried out, and he was hung by the neck until he died. And that, folks, is all we have for part 1 of episode 3 of 5 Blacksmiths in History. I hope you found that interesting and enjoyed part 1. I know I really enjoy making these videos, and I find this history of blacksmiths just totally interesting. Everyone has a different background, as, that's obvious, but, yeah, it's cool. It's interesting, it's history, and I love learning about it, and I hope you guys love learning about it too. If you have any thoughts, comments, or suggestions, please leave them down in the comments section below. And of course, don't forget to like this video, and share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Y'all have a good one.
Oh, God.
Today we have Jim from the Crazy Viking Forge. How are you doing today?